There is a question that science has been quietly asking for decades, a question that touches something most of us have felt, but never been able to explain. Why do some people rise? Why, when everything around them is falling apart, when the pressure is crushing and the stakes are as high as they can get, why do certain men and women become more focused, more clear, more alive, while others freeze for generations? We assumed the answer was upbringing, education, hard work, faith, character, and those things matter. They matter enormously. But now, for the first time in human history, science is giving us a far older answer. The answer, it turns out, may have been written into your cells before you were even born. Tonight, we are going on a journey that begins not in a boardroom or a classroom, but on the grasslands of prehistoric Africa, 50,000 years ago. We are going to follow a thread, a biological thread, that connects the ancient chiefs and hunters of our earliest ancestors, directly to the leaders who shape our world today. And along the way, we are going to ask you a question, a deeply personal question. Could it be you? Imagine you are standing on the African savannah 50,000 years ago. Your entire world is that small group of people around that fire, perhaps 30 of them, perhaps 50. Your family, your tribe, your whole universe. And tonight a predator has been spotted near the camp. In that moment, your tribe has two kinds of people. There are those whose bodies flood with terror. Their hearts race, their hands shake. Every instinct screams, hide, don't move, wait for someone else to act. And then, there is one person who does something different. His pulse rises, but it doesn't paralyze him. It sharpens him. His eyes narrow. His mind goes clear as glass. And before anyone else has processed what is happening, he has already made a decision. He acts. Biologists call this the stress response differential. But our ancestors had a simpler name for it. They called that man the chief. Here is what makes this story so extraordinary. That chief, that man who could act when others froze, had children. And those children inherited something from him. Not just his name, not just his status. They inherited his biology. Evolutionary biologists call this process selective pressure. For tens of thousands of years, across every culture on Earth, the individuals who could function, who could lead, decide, and dominate under extreme stress, those individuals survived in greater numbers. They had more children. Their traits were passed down. And here is something remarkable. This pattern appears in virtually every civilization we have ever studied. Whether you look at the chieftains of ancient Ireland, the warrior kings of West Africa, the samurai clans of feudal Japan, or the tribal councils of the Native American plains, every human society developed a distinct class of individuals who were biologically different from the general population in one critical way. They were built for crisis. The question science is now asking is this: are those genes still among us? The answer appears to be yes. Neuroscientists, the scientists who study the human brain and nervous system, have identified several specific biological traits that appear consistently in individuals who thrive in high-pressure environments. These are not personality traits. They are not attitudes. They are measurable, physical characteristics of the human brain and body. 3 stand out above all others. First, a unique relationship with the fear response. Where most people experience fear as a stop signal, the brain essentially putting on the brakes, these individuals experience fear as an accelerator. Their threat detection systems activate faster, and their decision-making centers remain online even as their stress hormones surge. Second, an unusual dopamine reward system. Dopamine is the brain chemical most associated with reward and pleasure. In the general population, the dopamine system rewards safety and certainty. In a distinct subset of individuals, it appears to reward challenge and novelty, including mortal risk. These people, simply put, feel better when the stakes are high. Third, what researchers call cortisol resilience, the ability to sustain cognitive function even when the body is flooded with the hormone associated with chronic stress. Most people's thinking deteriorates sharply under prolonged pressure. These individuals' thinking does not. These are not supernatural gifts. They are ancient biological tools, and we are only now beginning to understand the genetic switches that turn them on. In 1993, a research team in the Netherlands made a discovery that would quietly reshape the way scientists thought about human behavior and aggression. They identified a specific variant, a specific version of a gene called MAOA. It stands for monoamine oxidase. Now, before your eyes glaze over at the technical language, let us explain what this gene actually does. In plain terms, MAOA is essentially a regulator. It controls the levels of certain key chemicals in your brain, including serotonin, dopamine, and norepinephrine. These are the chemicals that govern your mood, your aggression, your ability to take risks, and your response to reward. There are two main variants of this gene. The first is called MAOH. The H stands for high activity. In people who carry this variant, the MAOA gene is working at full speed, breaking down those brain chemicals quickly, keeping levels low and relatively stable. The second variant is called MAOLL for low activity. In people with this variant, the gene works more slowly. Those key brain chemicals dopamine, serotonin, norepinephrine build up to higher levels, and the effect of that difference, it is profound. Individuals with the MAOAL variant have been found across multiple independent studies to show higher levels of what researchers call reactive aggression, that is, a more intense and explosive response to threat or competition. They also show a measurably higher tolerance for risk. Media headlines years ago gave this variant a more dramatic name, the warrior gene, and the name stuck because, as we are about to see, the science behind it is genuinely remarkable. Now here is where the research becomes truly striking and where it becomes relevant to your own life. Across a growing body of scientific literature, researchers have found that the MAOAL variant appears with a measurably higher frequency in certain elite professional populations than it does in the general public. We must be careful here and honest. This is population-level statistical data. Not every person with MAOAL becomes a high-stakes leader, and not every great leader carries MAOAL. Biology is never that simple, but the pattern is consistent enough to be scientifically significant, and it raises a question that is very difficult to dismiss. Think about the greatest leaders you have known in your own life. Think about the men and women who built companies from nothing during the turbulent post-war years. Think about the military officers who kept their heads in Korea and Vietnam. Think about the surgeons, the test pilots, the homicide detectives. What did those people have in common? Not just ambition, not just intelligence, something else. Something that cannot be taught in any classroom. A biological thermostat set permanently to high. Scientists believe that for a meaningful subset of those exceptional individuals, the gene we are discussing today have been one of the key reasons why. Let us go one layer deeper, because this is where the science gets genuinely fascinating. Inside your brain, there is a small, almond-shaped structure called the amygdala. It is your brain's alarm system. When you perceive a threat, whether that is a snarling dog, a stock market crash, or an argument with a difficult person, your amygdala fires. It sends a signal throughout your entire brain and body. Danger. In most people, that signal triggers what is called the fight or flight response. Your heart races, your palms sweat, adrenaline floods your system, and critically your higher reasoning shuts down. The part of your brain responsible for clear thinking, planning, and judgment, the prefrontal cortex, goes offline. Even briefly. This is why most people make terrible decisions under extreme pressure. The alarm goes off, and the reasoning center loses power. but in individuals with the MAOAL variant and in individuals with certain other genetic profiles, we will discuss something different appears to happen. The alarm still sounds, the adrenaline still flows, but the prefrontal cortex stays on. The reasoning center maintains power. Scientists theorize this may be related to the higher concentrations of dopamine and serotonin that accumulate in MAOAL carriers. Those elevated brain chemicals may actually provide a kind of buffer stabilizing the higher functions of the brain, even as the body surges with stress hormones. The result is an individual who can, in the middle of a genuine crisis, remain precisely as calm and clear-headed as the rest of us are on a quiet Tuesday morning. Think about what that means. Think about the edge that would give someone in business, in medicine, in military command, in any domain where decisions under pressure determine outcomes. That edge, for some people, may have been written into their DNA before they took their first breath. Let us talk about something everyone understands: motivation. Why do some people work 18-hour days? Not because they have to, not because someone is forcing them, but because they genuinely cannot imagine doing anything else. Why do some people walk away from safe, comfortable situations to chase something uncertain and enormous? Why do some people find that kind of ambition completely natural, while others find it genuinely baffling? Part of the answer, researchers believe, lies in how certain individuals' brains process reward. In the general population, the dopamine reward system, the brain's motivation engine, is calibrated primarily towards safety and certainty. You do something that works, you get a small dopamine hit, and your brain says, do that again. This is why most people prefer reliable routines and familiar situations. The brain is literally rewarding them for staying safe. But in a subset of individuals whose dopamine system appears to be calibrated differently, the reward arrives not from certainty, but from challenge, from novelty, from risk. These individuals' brains are not rewarding safety. They are rewarding the pursuit of high-stakes outcomes. And the consequence is a person who is almost constitutionally incapable of coasting, who finds genuine satisfaction only at the outer edge of their capabilities, who is, in the most literal biological sense, driven. Now we come to perhaps the most underappreciated biological advantage of all. Cortisol is a hormone your body produces in response to stress, in short bursts. It is tremendously useful. It sharpens focus, mobilizes energy, and prepares you for action. But chronic cortisol, the kind that results from weeks, months, or years of sustained high-pressure situations, is devastating. It impairs memory. It degrades decision-making. It contributes to depression, physical illness, and what we commonly call burnout. Most people, under sustained institutional pressure, running a company through a recession, managing a hospital through a crisis, leading an organization through years of turbulent change, will eventually experience significant cognitive decline. Their thinking gets foggy, their judgment deteriorates. But researchers have identified a distinct biological profile present in a small percentage of the population in which cortisol receptors function differently. These individuals' brains do not degrade the same way under long-term stress. They call this cortisol resilience. And it may be one of the primary reasons why certain leaders seem to get sharper, not duller, as a crisis drags on. Why the pressure that exhausts everyone else seems to clarify them. Now we must stop, because an honest documentary demands honesty. We have been discussing genes and brain chemistry, and it would be easy to walk away from this with the wrong conclusion. The wrong conclusion would be, some people are born to lead, and the rest of us should just get out of the way. That is not what the science says, not even close. Here is what the science actually says. Genes are not destiny, they are potential. They are, if you will, the seed, but a seed without soil, sunlight, and water does not become a tree. It becomes nothing. Every researcher in this field without exception emphasizes the genetic predispositions for leadership are environmental activation. They require challenge. They require adversity. They require mentorship. They require failure and recovery. The individuals who carry these genetic markers, but who never face genuine difficulty, have to make hard decisions, never experience real consequence. Those individuals do not automatically become exceptional leaders. The potential sits dormant, like a muscle that was never used. On the other hand, there are individuals with no particular genetic advantage who, through extraordinary discipline, experience, and moral character, become genuinely great leaders. Genetics, as one researcher beautifully put it, loads the gun, but life pulls the trigger. Every gift carries a cost. This is one of the oldest truths in human experience, and the biological profile we have been describing tonight is no different. The same neurological wiring that allows a person to remain calm in a boardroom crisis, the elevated dopamine, the cortisol resilience, the hair-trigger stress response turned toward action, that same wiring creates very real challenges in the rest of life. Researchers have found that individuals with high-risk genetic profiles frequently report difficulty in situations that most people find comforting: quiet evenings at home, routine social occasions, retirement, for people whose brains are calibrated for a high-stakes challenge. The absence of challenge does not feel like peace. It feels like deprivation. There is also the question of relationships. A person who processes fear as fuel, who is most alive when the stakes are highest, can be extraordinarily difficult to live with. The qualities that make them extraordinary leaders can make them exhausting partners, parents, and friends. And there is a subtler risk that researchers have only recently begun to study: the risk of ethical detachment. When your brain is wired to cut through emotion in pursuit of an objective, when your highest dopamine rewards come from winning rather than from connection, the ordinary moral guardrails that most people feel instinctively can sometimes become quieter. History is full of individuals who possessed every marker of biological leadership excellence and who used those gifts to cause tremendous harm. The same wiring that can build an empire can, without wisdom and character, tear one down. So if these traits require activation, if the genetic potential must be triggered by experience, what exactly does that trigger look like? Research and the biographies of exceptional leaders tell a remarkably consistent story. The first trigger is early adversity. An overwhelming number of exceptional leaders across business, military, medicine, and public service experience significant hardship in their early years: economic hardship, loss, instability, the kind of difficulty that forces a young person to develop extraordinary self-reliance. Think of the men and women who grew up during the Great Depression, who fought in the Second World War, who built businesses from absolutely nothing in the post-war years. Those experiences did not merely teach them lessons. At a biological level, they activated something. The second trigger is mentorship. Genuine, demanding mentorship. Someone who placed real expectations on them, who refused to let them coast. The third trigger is what psychologists call the crucible moment: a single, high-stakes failure, a business that collapsed, a mission that went wrong, a decision that cost dearly, followed by a choice: retreat or rebuild. For individuals with the right genetic substrate, that choice, that moment of picking yourself up off the floor, appears to lock in something that nothing else can: a permanent recalibration of what they believed they are capable of. We promised you, at the beginning of this documentary, a personal question. Here it is. Think about your own life. Have you noticed that you tend to become clearer, more confused when a genuine crisis arrives? That while others around you are overwhelmed, something in you settles? Have you found, looking back across your career, that your best work, your most decisive, most creative, most impactful work happened not during comfortable periods, but during the most difficult ones? Have you ever felt, in the quiet stretches of a safe and comfortable life, a kind of restlessness that you could never quite explain, a feeling that you were somehow operating well below the level you were built for. If any of that resonates, and we suspect, for a meaningful number of people watching tonight, that it will, you may be looking at the fingerprints of exactly the biological profile we have been describing. We are not saying you have a particular gene. No documentary can tell you that. A proper genetic analysis, conducted by qualified professionals, can. What we are saying is this: the traits that science associates with exceptional leadership are not mysterious. They are not magical. They are biological. They are real. And they have been present in human populations for as long as human populations have existed. And the odds are better than you might think that some of them are present in you. Here is something that would have seemed like science fiction even 20 years ago. Researchers are now developing what they call personalized leadership training, coaching and development programs designed not around generic best practices, but around an individual's specific genetic and neurological profile. The idea is elegant in its simplicity. If we know that a person's dopamine system rewards challenge rather than stability, we design their development program accordingly, placing them in progressively more demanding situations to activate that reward mechanism. If we know their cortisol resilience is naturally high, we do not waste time teaching them stress management techniques designed for people who do not have that resilience. We focus on something else entirely, perhaps the ethical dimensions of decision-making under pressure. And if we know their genetic profile suggests a potential for burnout in the 4th or 5th decade of a high-pressure career, we can intervene early, building in recovery protocols and support structures that prevent that outcome. This field is young. It is not without controversy, and we must be rigorously careful about the ethical questions. It raises questions about privacy, about equity, about who has access to this kind of knowledge. But the direction is clear. The future of developing exceptional leaders will be biological as well as behavioral. We began tonight 50,000 years ago, on an African savanna, with a small group of human beings huddled around a fire, and we found, at the center of that group, a person who was different, not better, not more worthy, but different biologically, neurologically, constitutionally different, a person whose cells were wired to respond to danger not with paralysis, but with clarity, not with retreat, but with decision. That person's descendants are alive today. They are in our boardrooms and our operating rooms. They are in our firehouses and our courtrooms. Some of them are watching this documentary tonight. But here is the truth that science keeps returning to. No matter how deep into the genome researchers look, the gene is not the person. What makes a truly great leader is not the sequence of molecules in a single chromosome. It is the life built around that sequence, the choices made, the people served, the failures endured, and the lessons learned, the character forged over decades, that decides what those biological tools are used for. Your DNA may have handed you extraordinary tools. What you build with them is entirely up to you. Thank you for watching. If this documentary made you think, if it made you look at your own life differently, please share it with someone who needs to see it tonight. We will see you in the next one.